All right, welcome everyone to my workshop on how to level up as a coach or yoga instructor with Steel Mace Vinyasa. Today's a very special workshop. I'm only going to do this one time, so I'm super excited that you're here. Definitely watch the recording all the way through, and highly recommend if this teacher training calls to you. We're heavily recruiting right now early on in the year just to get the folks that really want to jump in head first and really get their toolbox expanded and get that high-level coaching for our program. So I'll for sure drop the link to register in the chat bar. It's just flowshala.com teacher training. So I'd love to open today with an introduction on how I came to develop this system for loaded asana. Now, it wasn't an overnight process, and it actually started back in 2009. So a lot of us recognize Flowshala as a new studio. We've been open for almost 3 years here in Bellingham, but this body of work started way back in 2009 when I started pairing club bells with a yoga practice. So I got my 200-hour teacher training fresh out of college. I was an exercise science major, and I was really curious about yoga, so I did my 200-hour teacher training in Baja, Mexico. I did a 26-day intensive, and we were taught to eat like yogis, meditate in the morning, tune into our chakras, and basically do about 6 to 8 hours a day in that teacher training. And I got so much out of it. I really resonated a lot with the teachings of yoga, and I knew I wanted to bring yoga to the mainstream, but I knew I wanted to teach it to the masses. So I continued on with my education. I got my master's in exercise science, and I was at the time mentored by my coach, Scott Sonnen, who's the founder of the Club Bell, and was attending his workshops and taking in these really non-conventional methods of training with ancient weapons. This is a mace here, a 7-pound and a 10-pound mace. And back then, it was not sexy to be using clubs or mace in a fitness setting or a yoga setting. And it still is definitely a little bit more on the niche side. And people kind of give you funny looks when you're swinging mace and clubs, but it's finally merging into more of a mainstream practice. So back then, I was a young, very timid yoga instructor. I didn't have a lot of confidence. My voice was, if you look at videos from me back on my YouTube channel back then, my voice was really, really quiet. My students would always have a hard time hearing me in class. And I really knew that I had a lot of work to do in learning how to really coach movement and really own the practice. So I tell you this backstory because I want you guys to know, I know a lot of you guys are considering the teacher training. You might be a yoga instructor, you might be a personal trainer that's burnt out and really wanting to reinvent yourself. And I just want you guys to know that I started out in that way similarly with not really knowing what exactly my specialty was, what exactly my niche was, and spent a lot of time just trying all the things that conventional fitness and conventional yoga had to offer. And it wasn't until I merged those two disciplines of functional movement training with clubs and classical asana that I really was able to find my niche and help a lot of people connect their mind and body through the vehicle of the breath and through the vehicle of the mace as well. So after graduate school, I moved to New York City, and I was a burnout personal trainer. 1 year that I ever was employed by, or I was actually an employee, was in that year that I worked in the Upper East Side as a private personal trainer at a boutique private personal training studio. So we had all the fanciest clients, and you could only work out at this gym if you had a private personal trainer. It wasn't a membership gym. It was just, you had your trainer, you came in, you got on the treadmill, we handed them their water and their towel, and we were just there counting their reps and making sure that they did the workout and kind of like babysitting them for all intensive purposes. So I did that, working about 30 hours a week. I worked 6 days a week. My first 6 weeks at that job, I actually worked 7 days a week with no days off. My eyes were bloodshot by the time I would come home from work because I was just available for 12 hours a day, 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. And that tends to be the lifestyle of a personal trainer. You work really long hours because you need to work the mornings and then the evenings, and then I'd come home and nap. I'd ride the subway home and take a nap in the middle of the day. Just to be able to keep my eyes open for the rest of my shift. So I did that for a year. I clocked the most hours out of anyone at our studio. I was a really hard worker. And I saw so many people getting injured from conventional lifting. And that was the style of training that we did there. We used machines. We did conventional bench press, conventional squat, conventional pull downs, lat pull downs, and things like that. I had a few yoga clients, but they weren't really open-minded to the clubs or to the mace. So after a year of feeling what that lifestyle did to my body, I started developing a small eating disorder where I thought I needed to be extremely thin. I was just watching my calories because my boss really put an emphasis on, eating like 100 calories for breakfast and drinking water throughout the day and just, really minimizing calories. So that vanity-based fitness mindset, I got firsthand experience of what that's like. And I made a decision after a year of doing that and seeing people get injured and experiencing that firsthand that I wanted to take a break and reset and recalibrate, and I really wanted to commit to teaching circular strength training and teaching with clubs. So that was a big turning point for me. So I quit my job, had this fancy job in this boutique studio in New York City, and I took off for 6 weeks to Costa Rica. I saved up a bunch of money, and I was asked to assist at a yoga teacher training. So during that time of just recollecting and going inward and seeing what really was important to me, I started workshopping what would it look like if I was to hybridize a yoga and a strength workout in the same session. And so I started toying around with that. I was with a coach friend of mine from the Circular Strength Training organization. So we were playing with clubs, doing TAC-fit things, and he was a yogi as well, so we would just workshop things on each other. And during the time I journaled, I created all these new movements that trained asana that had never been done before. So things that were very specific to yoga, because I was like, all right, yoga is my sport. How can I condition my body specifically for yoga asana? And I'm also an athlete. I was a cross-country runner, volleyball, did a ton of sports, softball, running, things like that, pole vault. I was like, how can I get more mobile and be able to have more power? Oh, this same practice of training loaded asana and training mobility patterns and functional movement patterns allowed me to get more power, more range of motion, and more longevity in my sport. So I really aim to bridge and merge the gap between strength training and yoga. So I discovered after I came back from that trip, I was like, all right, I'm back in New York City. And just to kind of run through the numbers, because I know a lot of you are trainers and working for someone else, you're always going to have to give a portion of your earnings to the coaching facility that you work for because they're providing you the clients. So when I was working for that woman, she charged $125 an hour. I kept 30%. So I made $37.50 of the $125 an hour that I was there doing the full session hour and program design. So when I got back, I said, you know what, there's got to be a better way. I want to work smarter and not harder. So I started curating my own clientele. I was a referral-based yoga instructor, and I would travel to people's homes, and I would still charge the $125 an hour because I came to them. And I curated the strength training and the yoga practice all in one. And I was able to work 20 hours a week and make 3 times as much as I did when I was working for someone else. So I really want to encourage you that if you really believe in yourself to create a high value program, that there's so much earning potential out there and that people are really looking for more than just somebody that's going to count their reps, more than someone that's just going to show them how to activate their glutes. If you can get to the deep intrinsic motivation, the deep why around what makes somebody motivated to create a movement practice that's meaningful for them, and you can hold their hand and keep them accountable for that, they're going to value it so much more. And I just found that the clients that I started attracting really valued functional movement, they valued mindset, they valued the skill set that I had, and they really valued the time with me, and they respected my time a lot more. So after a year of doing that, that was kind of like the hybrid time for all the FlowShala stuff you see now, was my one-on-one clients in New York City. I'd tote my club bells. I didn't have Mace back then. I'd tote my club bells in a backpack on a bicycle and ride up and down, uptown to downtown, uptown to downtown. Sometimes I'd ride like 20 miles a day on my fixed gear bike with my club bells. And I had a really awesome clientele. They loved it. They would have me come like 2 to 3 days a week. I'd come to their private gyms inside their buildings. And it was a really fun and special time. But I really missed Bellingham. And so I wanted to come back to Bellingham. And so during that time, after about a year of doing that, I was like, really miss my friends and family in Bellingham. And then I got pregnant with Cedric. And so I wanted to move back home. And I created the program Club Yoga. So we filmed it on a rooftop. Hired a guy from Craigslist to come shoot. It was like paid him like $150 to film a video of me doing this crazy club bell yoga on a rooftop. And I was like so excited and jazzed about it. I was like, I want to get this out in the world. I want to help people. This was pre-Instagram days. So I shared it out on YouTube and shared it on Facebook. And it got like 2,000 views in the first couple days. And I was like, whoa, cool. I've never had this many views. And then people recognizing the club bells, because those had been around for about 10 years. They're asking me to teach workshops, or like, where's the training videos? Can I buy the video? Can you come to London and teach? And I was like, oh my gosh, I don't even have a program yet. I better start working on it. And so I drastically shifted my career from personal trainer, burnt out, and then yoga instructor to movement educator pretty much overnight in that process of putting myself out there and putting myself out there in a way where I was able to communicate what I did through digital media. And this was pre-virtual coaching days, but I truly want to just emphasize the value of putting yourself out there in a virtual realm. If you're really passionate about what you do, and you're helping people and you're giving content away, you're really gonna serve and reach the people that really care about what you're doing. So long story short, that was a pretty long story. I just want you guys to kind of know the background of where this all came from. Since then, I developed several teacher training curriculums, including Club Yoga, which was a 16-hour seminar. And then I did Primal 12, which was the next level up from that, which is combining HIIT protocols with yoga-based conditioning. And I taught those seminars for about 7 years, traveling all around the world. It was super awesome, and it gave me a lot of time to see how this can really land in different cultures, and that it wasn't language specific. So I'd teach in Budapest, or I'd teach in Spain and have a translator. And movement is cross-cultural. So that was really awesome to see how it impacted different athletes' bodies and different age groups. I'd have men, I'd have people in their 40s, 50s, and 60s. I'd have trainers, I'd have yogis. So it really merged the gap between strength training and yoga and got everyone into one room working on really mastering these principles. And it was challenging every single time I taught those seminars to get all of that knowledge, because there's such a learning curve to really owning this in the nervous system. So to try to cram all that knowledge into a 2-day or a 4-day seminar was very, very challenging. And I found that the success rate of individuals coming to those seminars was not very high. So sometimes they would have an online course here and there, but they didn't really have any accountability. Maybe they had studied some YouTube videos, but they just showed up to the seminar expecting it to kind of happen for them. Like I was just going to, put a wand on their head and just, impart all of the knowledge into their head right away. And so after about 7-8 years of doing that, I developed the Steel Mace Vinyasa curriculum. So I developed another teacher training manual. And in the meantime, I started publishing my own online courses. So I've got about 12 online courses, which are all included as part of the teacher training curriculum. You get access to those throughout the curriculum, and you get to keep the prerequisite courses you get lifetime access to, which are Movement Lab, Movement Coaching 101, Prime, Steel Mace Vinyasa Level 1, Steel Mace Vinyasa Level 2. You get to have lifetime access to those so you can reference them. So started building this body of work, created another teacher training manual, Steel Mace Vinyasa, because I just learned after teaching, someone's popping in here, after teaching these seminars over and over again, that people really need to have something that they can reference later on. And so the first manual for Club Yoga did not look like the one that you'll see in the teacher training. You get that one as well, the Kinesiolyoga. I had to refine it. So I had to think, what is the best way for my students to really understand and retain this knowledge? And so I am really particular about how I design my manuals. They always have sections. The first section is just on theory. The second section is on the priming, then condition, practice, flow, and decompensation. So they're all organized very well, lots of templates and pictures and such. And I think that when you combine the virtual education, where you can go back and study, and then you have the manuals to reference, and then you come in and do your master intensive, your seminar, and then in our 100-hour teacher training, we also have movement labs with coaching teachbacks every weekend, plus office hours. I just realized after 8 years of doing it one way that there was a better way to do it, and so I really wanted to have people have that intensive mastermind experience where they're in a cohort of people that they also could learn from and they could be challenged by. Any questions so far? Feel free to ask in the chat bar if you're curious, if you have any questions that are coming up. And if the questions come up as we go, that's totally fine as well. So that's a bit of the backstory on how I started developing this curriculum. And then FlowShala was truly the first place that I could implement this in a group setting and see what the effects were. So it's been pretty eye-opening to see this on I call it like a general population, to see what a large-scale intervention for consistent strength training and asana conditioning training with flow state and with ancient weaponry, what that looks like when people have quality coaches consistently over the long haul. And anybody that's tuning in today, I would love for you guys to just do a quick little screen share of just share anything that you've noticed at FlowShala that's different from other yoga studios or fitness studios that you've attended before. What's different about this practice compared to traditional or conventional?
Summer, for me, it's the detailed explanations of the movement and what's actually happening in the body.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. So that layer of kinesiology is built into every single class. We really want to educate our students on the why and the biomechanics behind every single movement and how to stabilize, like first create stability and activation, and then alignment, precision, and breath control. Thanks, Marilyn. Sarah and Nicole?
Yeah, I'll kind of supplement that. The anatomy-based cues are a huge thing. And also at like every single like workout studio I've ever been to, you always know people who are getting hurt all the time, but that never happens here. Like everybody feels really empowered by the coaches, and like you're given a lot of tools so you can like stay safe but still challenge yourself.
Yeah, regressions and anatomy-based cueing. Cool, thanks, Sarah. Nicole, do you want to chime in?
Yeah, I'll piggyback on that as well and just say that the levels, I really appreciate the fact that in every class you have a wide range of levels, like you said, regression, but you can also step up the complexity to work for your day and keep you challenged and in the moment.
Awesome. And these are all key factors of eliciting a flow state response consistently and repeatably. So when you have those levels of complexity, and when your students are able to upshift or downshift their complexity, upshift or downshift their breath, depending on the day, depending on where they're at in the workout, I really truly believe in educating the students to become their own coach so that they can build that autonomy, and it just helps build on their intrinsic motivation to really understand the deep why. Which is a great segue into our first topic. So I'm sure you guys all read the lead page that got you here. It's just like what we're gonna learn. So I have the 5 or 6 bullet pointed things that we're gonna touch on. We'll have a time for Q&A after each of these. So please, if questions come up, just write them down, and then you can also just write them into the chat bar as well. So the first bullet point is how do we program classes versus teaching random fitness or randomized yoga? So what do I mean by that? So programming a sport-specific class or a performance-specific class is different than teaching a randomized fitness class or randomized yoga class. I'll go into a little bit of detail about the scope of the problem that I saw when I started developing the curriculum. So the problem for yoga classes, they tended to offer long, complex sequences of poses from all categories of postures. So they would touch on open hip, then closed hip, then single leg balance, maybe a headstand in there and some core. But due to time constraints in a 60-minute class, there wasn't enough exposure to the asana and the mechanics to really allow for mastery. So I might visit one pose 1 to maybe 2 times briefly, but not a heavy emphasis on how to get there, the mechanics of stability, definitely no load in the posture. And so every time I'd come to class, I'd see this randomized sequence that didn't really allow for a training effect or a progression. I see a little bit of freezing on your guys' end, so I'm just gonna make sure we're all good here. Okay, we're back. Saw a slight freeze there. So just raise your hand, quick show of hands, if you've been to a yoga class that felt like it had the whole smattering of every yoga posture in it, but no specific focus. Okay, so the problem with that is it's a really high rate of injury when we're not training specific movement patterns or educating our students how to enter them safely, or when we're going from deep forward folds to deep back bends to arm balance to open hips. So what happens is the nervous system registers that as a threat, and so then we then go into a state of fight or flight where we're protecting and we're not in full trust. So when we're not trusting the movement, it's really difficult to get into a state of flow. And I don't know if you've ever been to a yoga class where the yoga teacher is just calling out a big long sequence and there was no like nesting to lead up to that. And you're kind of like, do I really trust what she's about to say? I'm gonna just modify it myself over here just to keep myself safe. So when you're not having that feeling of trust, that can be just to take you out of flow state completely. Fitness classes. So I'm sure you guys have all come to fitness classes. I used to teach group fitness 5 days a week at the rec center when I was in college. And I taught a lot of the, I never taught like step aerobics, but I taught, booty blast and core, this, that, and the other, and the weights. I did the sculpt. Oh man, I had my little like headset. I was all about it. So fitness classes tend to focus on a smattering of push-ups, lunges, squats, core, and everyone's favorite, the burpee. And we know that there's not one size that fits all for burpees. You'll see a whole gamut of all different types of burpees. At the Flow Shallow, we teach the very technical yogi burpee with quality form. Coaches would prioritize sweating, working hard over form. There were no real regressions for these conventional movements. And notice in conventional fitness, we tend to be overemphasizing the heave and the surge. So heaving meaning like the squat pattern, moving up and down, the surge, but there was very little lateral movement or open hip movement or even like skandasana, multi-plane movement, or rotation. Rotations or yaw is a big one that's generally not visited in conventional fitness exercises. And now the last one, just kind of laying out the scope of the problem and why I wanted to create a solution for this. CrossFit workouts tended to focus on heavy Olympic lifts like cleans, deadlifts, snatches, and pull-ups. And it definitely was a craze, very popular for a while. So we saw everyday people with no Olympic lifting background coming in and loading their spines with very, very heavy and dangerous weights sometimes. And over time, these deconditioned athletes with limited range of motion and limited background in Olympic lifting would injure their lower back, shoulders. Some reported loss of control of their bladder during workouts. Some reported blacking out or overtraining. And generally, I've worked with many individuals that have come from CrossFit. There's definitely some really great CrossFit studios out there with an emphasis on functional training. And I'm merely just addressing the craze of doing the CrossFit style workout, which was geared towards training for the CrossFit Games. And the CrossFit Games is throwing any crazy workout or challenge at you, and you're supposed to be able to do that challenge in the quickest amount of time. So heavy lifts, climbing, jumping, Olympic style lifting, and doing that for time. So that was the style that they trained, was to be able to increase their strength and their work capacity and their ability to handle randomized training. So they're actually training randomly for randomized training. And I knew there had to be a smarter way to train. And luckily, I was already part of an organization, the TACFIT organization, where we were spearheading health first fitness with recovery-based training and training on the 4-day wave, using mobility, integrating a heavy emphasis on mobility, and our no and low intensity days as well, just as important as our high intensity. So recovery-based training, this is, write this down if you're taking notes later on. So recovery-based training integrates strength and mobility into one session. So in how we program our classes, here's a bullet point list of all the things we're looking for, our check boxes. First, we identify the sport-specific performance attribute that we want to condition or train. So if we're a yogi, we have several different attributes to that sport. We have being able to hold closed hip postures, so having closed hip leg endurance. Closed hip just means that both of my femur bones hips are pointing straight ahead. There's no external rotation of the femur. And then we've got our open hip conditioning. So if you've ever seen a CrossFit athlete try to do a yoga pose, generally it kind of looks like this because they're so accustomed to being in that squat that their body and their fascia adapts to pre-tighten the tissues in the hip flexors and has very limited range in external rotation. So other attributes for yoga: arm endurance, core endurance, single-legged balance, and proprioception. Proprioception is the ability to move your body throughout space without having to track with your eyes. So knowing where your backhand is in the warrior two. Is it down? Is it up? Is it way over here? So these are all the sport-specific attributes that, using this cross-training modality, so light load, more sophisticated movement patterns, a greater degree of precision and breath control. Our goal is to improve the functionality and the quality of movement so that eventually over time we can progressively add load, and our focus is not necessarily the load, but it's the quality of the movement patterns and the precision and the ability to move through the entire range of motion. So I think I named off all the sport-specific attributes, but if you want them one more time, we've got closed hip conditioning, open hip conditioning, single leg balance, hamstring flexibility, arm endurance, and core endurance. And these are the baseline different performance attributes that you'll study in your prime. This is the prerequisite online course that's part of our 100-hour curriculum. And we teach our students how to superset. So picking a primary focus and a secondary focus from two of those 6 categories. So let's say I have my closed hip conditioning and I'm doing single-legged balance, and those are my primary and secondary focus. So I would order my exercises, and we teach you how to do this, we give you templates, we coach you on how to program in a meaningful way. So we would superset our, let's say our yogi squats, followed by a single-legged, so that's closed hip conditioning. Then we'd have a warrior 3 RDL, that's our single-legged balance. And our third exercise would be our yogi lunge, so another closed hip conditioning drill. And our fourth exercise would be 4-corner balance drill. If you're not familiar with the terms of those, definitely check out the teacher training. We'll give you all the details on that. So when we superset, we have the opportunities to start building a progression or a adaptation by progressing the load incrementally. We use in that training protocol, we would start with like a 90-30 protocol, so 90 seconds of work, 30 seconds of rest, a 3-to-1 work to rest ratio, so we can start to create that adaptation in the lungs and start to build greater control and precision in the alignment of those postures, or of those exercises, which then relates to the postures. So our recipe for creating a class looks like this. Feel free to write this down. We've got prime. Prime is the awakening drills that are very specific to the conditioning drills presented. And I just presented a little mini 4-exercise circuit, maybe 4 to 5 exercises. So we've got our prime mobility drills. We've got our conditioning, which are strength drills where we're either bearing load with body weight or bearing load with a mace or with clubs. And then we've got our flow section, which is integrating either a yoga-based flow or holding static postures. So by utilizing HIIT protocols, first you want to master the 90-30. We give you lots of time to master that. Eventually, I really think it's valuable as yoga coaches and movement specialists to integrate and understand how different timing protocols affect the body. So we teach our students in the 100-hour, we do office hours where we're going deeper into the why and the energy systems behind different timing protocols. So timing protocols such as EMODIM, which is every minute on the minute, AMRAP, which is as many rounds as possible in 20 minutes, Tabata, which is the 20 seconds on, 10 seconds rest. We're moving through that 8 times for one exercise and then moving to the next one. 4x1, 4 minutes of work, 1 minute of rest, which is a 4-to-1 work to rest ratio. And then in the Steel Mace Vinyasa program, we present the 2 minutes of work, 30 seconds of rest. So it's a 4-to-1 work to rest ratio. Now in the first 3, EMODIM, AMRAP, and Tabata, those ones we're working on fast twitch. So we're working on speed, which is an attribute that tends to get deconditioned in yogi athletes, or athletes that identify as with yoga being their primary sport. Generally, the fast twitch gets deconditioned because they are so focused on lengthening and holding the asana and moving really slow from posture to posture. So to create a more well-rounded athlete, having these other timing protocols that emphasize speed and fast twitch is in their advantage because it's going to help them increase cardiovascular endurance, increase strength, and also elicit the flow state response. So they're actually doing conditioning that gets their heart rate up, and they're utilizing different breathing techniques and the magic behind getting into flow state. So generally in a 20-minute HIIT workout, if you're doing it here at the Flow Shell and it's programmed in a way that's moving from simple to complex, which we teach our coaches, generally between minutes 12 and 18 in a 20-minute circuit, that's when you're tapping into the neuroimmunoendocrine response. Now, this is a really magic place. This is why you feel so good when you leave a Flow Shell workout. is you're metabolizing the stress response. So you're metabolizing cortisol, adrenaline, epinephrine, and you're elevating your serotonin, your dopamine levels. And you're also ramping up your motor efficiency, which is why the exercises get easier after about minutes 12 to 13, right around there. So your body upshifts into perceiving the same amount of work as easier. Your immune system ramps up, so higher white blood cell count. And your hormones regulate. What an amazing thing to have our hormones and endocrine system consistently getting a nice bath and digesting the stress response, giving our adrenal glands a moment to stop producing adrenaline and being in that state of flow where our gamma brainwaves can turn on and we are in a higher brainwave state where we're feeling fully connected with our bodies. So over time, after teaching flow state and figuring out this, and I figured it out through integrating the 3 wings of CST and just applying it to yoga. So definitely took a lot of the work that my coach Scott Sonnen had done on recovery-based training and just applied it in a yoga-based setting with lighter load and more specific yoga-based movement. And what I found is over time, I was able to elicit that flow state response consistently with this recipe. So I could take everyday people that had no experience with mace or clubs. I could regress the exercises in such a way that they primed in the beginning. So they primed their motor pathways, they activated their motor units in their various muscle groups that they would be using. They primed the different degrees of freedom that they would be experiencing in conditioning. And by progressively building up the complexity and giving them the permission and the education on how to ramp up and how to ramp down, we were able to elicit that flow state response consistently. And people report being, I'll always ask at the end of my classes, when I used to teach 4 to 5 classes a week, now I'm very much focused on the teacher training, but I would always ask my students after class, like, what does flow state feel like? What do you feel like when you're in flow state? So I'll open up to you guys. Tell us in your own words, when do you know that you're in a state of flow in a workout? Generally, how long can you stay there? And what are some key markers for being in flow state? And all right, Sarah is going to go first. Sarah's she's been training with us for a couple years, and she also has come to a couple seminars as well for Steel Mace.
Yeah, so the flow state, that is amazing. It kind of takes a while to get used to, but like once I kind of started hitting it more regularly, right about that, like, 10, 12-minute mark, it's kind of like your body falls in a routine and it's not taking that additional mental effort, and you feel a lot of clarity in the movement. And it's kind of easy to like stick with it and kind of get through it. And the feeling after is like even better than any sort of other workout. You basically come to like a happy place in your mind, and it makes everything a lot easier.
Awesome. Thanks so much for sharing. She hit the nail on the head. That's exactly what's happening is we're getting that serotonin and dopamine, that natural rush of happy feelings so that our body and the hormone regulation, endocrine system balance. Does anybody else have anything they want to add about their personal flow state experience? I know Nicole's been doing a lot of the digital nomad online classes. You've been super consistent. I've seen a lot of progress with you in the past year plus that you've been training with us with just rocking the mace and doing some advanced stuff. Tell us about your flow state.
Yeah, my practice has totally grown, and I'm super grateful for it. And yeah, when you asked that question originally, yeah, the flow state itself is really unique to this practice. And everything that you said, Sarah, is it. Like, I feel a lot of focus. Sometimes I have that like pinpoint precision on a place in the room. And then also that work gets easier, which you mentioned earlier, and your body just knows. I feel like my body can just fall into those positions really easily and with trust and clarity. And I love that when in that second round, it often happens for about 10 minutes. So about that, a little bit from the last of the first round in a 90-30, for example, into the whole second round. I love that feeling. And then that feeling afterwards that you were talking about, I've been feeling it in my daily life because I have been practicing on a wave, and then finding myself craving those movements. But now hearing this talk, I'm like, oh, but maybe I'm craving what I get from the workout. Like that feeling of just centered and wholeness has been sort of a part of my practice now too, just like full embodiment, which I find with this too. Flow state, go flow state.
Yay. So I want to touch on two things that she shared before we go on to Marilyn, if Marilyn wants to share. Marilyn's a little newer, so her flow state might be a little different for now. But Nicole stated she got into a complete state of it was like trust and being able to know where you needed to go without thinking about it. And so that the mechanism for that, if you're looking at the physiology behind flow state and the neuroscience, is we're actually phasing off our prefrontal cortex. So inner critic tends to dominate a lot of our waking hours with, am I doing this right? Am I good enough? Am I worthy enough? Am I moving correctly? And so as you start to cultivate this flow practice, you're able to turn off your prefrontal cortex, your front brain, so phase off the inner critic and tap into higher centers of the brain, which are in the salient network, motivation network, and executive network, which are key markers for flow state, are lighting up those areas of the brain and turning off the front brain. And then the other, yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I was just thinking about how also graphing or like thinking afterwards about my workout, I really incorporated that whole journaling and the technique and the perceived exertion and all that. And that really just like somehow helped me map out where I was in my practice of technique. And I don't know, it helped me visualize for the next time. So again, it was like just adding on to the layer of trust and knowing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so a big thing that we coach, and I'll talk a bit about this on creating comprehensive wellness programs, is we coach our clients on how to track their own objective feedback in a workout. And it's part of just becoming more somatically connected, and you said embodied, so that you're tracking rate of perceived exertion, rate of perceived technique, and rate of perceived discomfort, and knowing how to stay within the desired parameters so that your discomfort never goes higher than a 4, your technique's always higher than a 6, and exertion's in the right range. And the embodiment, when you touched on, Nicole, feeling the flow state outside of the classroom as well, the more doses you get of flow state over time, your brain starts to recognize that pattern and you're able to turn it on with more ease. So it's almost like because you've had that kinesthetic experience so often of what it feels like to be in flow state, what happens is we start to move a little bit more freely and we start to feel a bit more embodied. And the flow state of mind practice, which was a key component of my like personal development coaching that I started even before Flowshala, which you guys have a lot of the content from that, is teaching people how to be in flow, recognize that so that you can turn it on in your creative flow and in other aspects of your life. So thank you so much for sharing, Nicole. It's really powerful. Marilyn, did you want to share a bit about your flow state experience, and how many months have you been doing training with us?
I'm only about 3.5 months, so I'm looking forward to the experience.
Awesome. So still haven't got to the flow state yet? Have you had little glimpses of it in class yet? Where you're feeling present and you're connected with your body?
I think a little bit with Simon in one of his workouts, because I finally didn't have to think so much about where the mace was.
Awesome. And that's when it starts, is just knowing and trusting that you've got the torque correct and you're going to catch it in the right place. Awesome. Very cool. Okay, so the final piece of this, in conditioning, the reason why it's important to add that element of focused interval conditioning. In that first round, we're skill building. So it's a time to go slow, really examine the different elements of where's the stability coming from, where's the alignment, where is my breath happening in this conditioning exercise. And then eventually building strength through precise repetitions. So making sure that every single repetition has picture perfect form. That's why our students report not ever getting hurt, or it's very rare that a student has an injury, because we're always keeping an eye on our students and making sure that they know when to regress if we see something that's misaligned. And empowering them. Like, it's not a demotion to do the regression. It's actually an opportunity to really build the foundational pieces of the exercise. We create unique conditioning drills for yoga transitions. We add layers of complexity so that our advanced students can enter flow state and keep being challenged appropriately. We teach the 5 levels of breath, which is breath mastery, which we cover in our teacher training. We cover motor control, coordination, proprioception. We teach resistance, torque, deep inner core activation, and alignment. So these are all exercise science-based principles, but it applied to this modality utilizing ancient weaponry. So I know a lot of you guys that will be watching this later on are probably in the realm of, I've been a yoga instructor for a lot of years, I want to reinvent myself, or I want to start adding this non-conventional method into my teaching or into my studio, or maybe you're a trainer, personal trainer who's always wanted to do a 200-hour teacher training but really could never find the time, and you really wanted something that's more applicable to strength training and functional movement. So the bullet point I want to touch on is why you should offer comprehensive wellness coaching as a premium service. So we're in an evolution right now, especially during COVID times, where our industry is changing drastically. It's the first time that we are no longer able to really coach anybody that we want in person because of the safety parameters for that. So we're exposed to a lot of virtual coaching mediums, such as virtual recorded classes, online courses, etc. So here's a little case study for myself, and then I'll map out a couple other mock case studies as well. So for me, prior to starting Flowshala, back when I was a private trainer, I started creating 6-week online programs back in 2014 after my son was born, because I wanted to work smarter, not harder. And I moved back to Bellingham, where the going rate for training was about $45 an hour at the time. So I no longer was making the $125 an hour. I was like, all right, I got to stack my schedule full. I got to keep my personal training clients happy, and I'm going to be a mom to this newborn baby. So what I did was I put a little page up on my website. I designed all my own websites, and I just wrote a description of what my 6-week program entailed. And a lot of you guys have done my 6 Weeks to Flow program at Flowshala. It was very similar to that. So I met with the client for onboarding, intake, and exercise history, and to set goals. So that one-on-one time is really, really key versus just going straight into a workout and having somebody just pay you to babysit them, watching them count reps. Can't emphasize that enough. Having some thought behind your program design is going to attract a client that really values your services. So I'd meet with the client, do their intake, set their goals, 1 hour. Then I had created a template that I could reuse again and again and customize their plans. So the template had information about recovery-based training, information about mindset, different lifestyle goals like daily meditation, daily journaling, nutrition tracking, etc. So I created that template, which I still use today as part of our transformation coaching curriculum. I mapped out the workouts for the client, because that's really what they hired me for, is they wanted to know when to train and what to do on the days that I worked with them and the days that they were by themselves. And in this case, for these virtual programs, they were completely on their own. I just built the program in the beginning, and I met with them 3 times in the 6 weeks. For a 45-minute session on form, habits, and lifestyle. And then they would send me videos every Sunday for review. So integrating that accountability piece where I'd map out 7 days of coaching for them a week for 6 weeks. Of course, some days were just yoga days or mobility. I would include hyperlinks to all the videos on YouTube at the time before I had all my programs. Or if I had programs, I would put different workouts for them to do on there. I had them track their workouts, like I said, and meet with them bi-weekly. So the total time was 1 hour of intake, 3 45-minute sessions plus the 15-minute review of video footage. So let's just, put that together as 4 hours of work. The cost of the program was $5.99. So I was able to bring my rate up and do less work and train smarter and not harder by implementing the whole program and keeping them accountable for the program and really coaching them on the quality of movement. So when they would submit their videos, we would have things to talk about because they submitted their Sun A or their conditioning exercises. And I always kept it simple. Just send me, one round, a 90-second round of 2 exercises from your circuit, and let's critique your form. And let's see where the misalignments are. Let's see where the power leakages are. Let's see, the things that they can't necessarily see. So 4 hours of work with the client, 1 hour of program design. The cost of the program was $5.99. So I was able to still retain the $125 an hour for virtual coaching. This is just one case study. I know there's many different ways to offer comprehensive wellness coaching, but I just want to give you guys some ideas so you can think outside the box. And again, training smarter and not always harder. Because as a trainer, you only have one body, and running around from place to place and being awake those long hours like I did is just not a way to embody wellness. And so I really want you guys to create a lifestyle that you love, attract the right clients that really value your time, and be able to thrive in this profession. So another example, trainer A charges $45 per hour, gives discounts, gives no program design, has no packages, does one-off sessions, and averages 3 to 4 cancellations per week. Works 15 hours total, but has 20 hours open for 5 days a week, and makes about $675 per week before taxes. So that's trainer A. And this is super common with trainers that have been using the old model or the old school model of just trading their time for money. Trainer B charges $125 per hour for one session and then bundles their sessions for $110 an hour in packs of 8 and 12. They create 12-week programs. So they do the template where they map out the workouts so that the client has other things to do on the off days. So they value it greater. They offer online video support using FlowShala programs such as Kinesiolyoga, so they get their client to invest in a program as well, so they have lifetime access to that course. And then the trainer then also gets an affiliate commission from being an affiliate of the studio. They offer accountability check-in text midweek and weekly FlowFit testing for fitness endurance. So that is how they're able to bring their rate up from the 45 to the 110. And they work 20 hours a week over 3 days. So this is Coach Megan is a prime example of how she built her personal training clientele. She works 20 hours a week over 3 days. She stacks her clients. They value her time. They show up. She's got minimal cancellations. Coach B is making $2,200 a week. Clients respect and value their time. So on a monthly, they're making average about $8,000 a month. And this is, if they have their own space, this is before expenses. So in the event you have a space that you're renting, or if you're curating and going to people's homes, generally a full-time workload for a fitness professional or movement coach would be about 20 hours a week because we're factoring in the travel time as well. Obviously, ideally, if you have a space that you can just stack your clients and have them come one after another, that's ideal, but not always feasible. So I give another variation. If 110 per hour in an 8 and 12 pack seems too high, cut the difference. So $80 per hour would be $1,600 a week. So we're still able to double our income, almost double our income, and have clients be more dedicated and get better results by offering comprehensive wellness coaching. And comprehensive wellness coaching is not just the workouts, but it's the other little things that we do, such as daily meditation, daily journaling, and mindset work, which we do here at the FlowShala with our virtual members and our private training clients as well. So it's the mindset and meditation and journaling, and it's the mapping out and tracking rate of perceived exertion, technique, discomfort, and providing a higher level movement education as well. And then also bonus points if you've got resources for nutrition. We teach our folks to eat a non-inflammatory diet, prioritizing ancestral health, and we have seminars, bi-weekly seminars on that as well at our studio. Questions, comments, feedback? How's the lifestyle of coaching been for you guys? Those of you guys that started with the 6-week transformation challenge. Was it hard? How'd it go?
Like I first started out at FlowShala by joining the 6-week challenge. I basically, like, my mom started doing it and she came home, she's like, I'm doing this really cool thing. And I was like, oh, I want to do that too. But it was a great way to kind of like get me started and introduced to the practice of like daily meditation, daily journaling. And I kind of got out of that for a while, but with everything being so crazy the past year, I was really glad to have that base. And I could still like come and like do like the virtual classes and everything. And that was like a really great way to work out any sort of stress or anxiety that I had going on. So I was thankful for that resource.
Awesome, cool. Any other folks want to chime in?
Yeah, totally the same as Sarah. I started off with a 6-week challenge and then left it for maybe 9 months to a year. And then with COVID, I was able to recommit myself to what was important and health. And I just was able to jump right back on your program. And then I got, not obsessively, I'd say healthy tracking, but everyone around me and my family was like, oh, you do that every day. Like you every time before you go to bed, you track your stuff. And I'm like, yeah, it's like, it feels good.
Yeah.
And so that really became a healthy grounding point for me. And yeah, I just have received so many benefits where I like started running. I never have liked running in my entire life, but now I have the endurance and the breath control, and yeah, so many great things have come from really just thinking, and the ability to go deeper into any one of the avenues that you're in, breath work or nutrition. It's led me on a whole I'm able to, it opened up the pathway for me to research more into nutrition and just continue that clean, healthy eating, what that looks like for me, and embodying that with my own knowledge. So it's been a great path for me. And now even taking it further to what is a flow practice for me? Like what is trying to incorporate movement within MACE and yoga, and for me without a coach. And so that's also the next progression for me 9 months in, and I'm loving it. So yeah, grateful.
Awesome. Cool. Such good stuff. All right. So that kind of ties up that section on comprehensive wellness coaching. There's definitely a need for it right now. We don't just need another trainer counting reps. We need somebody that's going to keep us accountable and give us a skill set to truly master these little habits. This is the things that we do over a long term, the little things we do over a long term that make a really big difference. And tracking, getting objective feedback and self-monitoring is one of the key factors in a sustainable long-term behavioral change progression. So if you've ever heard of the trans-theoretical model for behavioral change, many of you guys attending this workshop are in the pre-contemplation, contemplation, probably more the contemplation phase. Pre-contemplation is I'm not even thinking about making a change. I'm probably not even going to watch this workshop later on. I just click the link. That's pre-contemplation. Contemplation is, I'm considering trying something new because I haven't been able to get the results on my own, and I want a valuable resource or a trusted, knowledgeable resource that's a system that's tried and true, that's gotten people results. I'm in the contemplation phase. And then there's the action phase. So Marilyn would be in the action phase. Nicole, when she first started her 6-week, was in action. So anybody that's on day 0 to 6 months is considered in the action phase. And that's where they really need a high level of accountability, which is why we recommend transformation coaching. It's our highest touch program with the highest amount of accountability. You're meeting with a coach 2 times a month. You're coming to classes. You're coming to nutrition seminars. You're getting a text every week from your coach making sure you hit your 3 workouts a week. So we need that relationship with the coach in the action phase to really start to make progress. And as you're building out your comprehensive wellness plans, integrating that accountability and even, what are the consequences for not? Like, what are you going to do to help them get back on track? And not in a punishing way, but in a meet them where they're at and really identify what is the barrier or self-limiting belief that's preventing them from making that habit change. Those are kind of the elements of the stages of change. And then the final one that we're all working towards is maintenance. And this is not cyclical. It's not like you fall off the wagon. It's ebbs and flows. So you might be in action and then you're in maintenance and then you fall off for a little bit. You're in contemplation again, thinking you want to get back on track. So at any point in your life, you might be in any of those stages, but just know that once you've had like a really kinesthetic experience of understanding all the elements of a well-rounded comprehensive wellness program, that you'll have that remembrance in your nervous system and that experience to look back on and draw back from, and then draw back on, and then you can get back there really quickly. And strength is stored in your nervous system. Like, we remember the complexity of training with MACE and the sophistication of proprioception, so that when we pick up the tool again, it's like coming home. It's like, all right, I'm coming back home to my body. I'm coming home to my flow practice. And then I think Nicole stated it really well. Cultivating an autonomous practice is the next progression. So having the coaches, having the online recorded classes is definitely a component of learning. We always want to have coaches and have that support of the group environment. And then the next progression is, 2 days a week having your own flow practice, where you start to integrate the somatics behind the movement. So what I've been doing with our teachers in training is we're looking at patterns, postures, and power leakages. What are the patterns in our lives that keep showing up? Are we people pleasing? Are we procrastinating? Do we have negative self-talk, or attracting unworthy mates in our life, or XYZ? What is the pattern? And then how can we use the movement practice to cultivate a deeper awareness of where in our energetic centers that the pattern is impacting our energetic centers? So are we feeling blocked in heart and solar plexus and throat? Are we feeling ungrounded? We have really poor balance. Are we feeling lack of fluidity in our hips? So where in our energetic centers are these patterns impacting us, right? And then how can we start to cultivate a more meaningful practice so that when we go to the mat, it's not just I'm setting an intention in the beginning of class. It's all right, I'm gonna let myself feel all the feelings of where these patterns are hitting in my body in the prime section. I'm gonna condition and move through it and empower myself in the conditioning section. And then I'm gonna flow and just be free and fully in tune with my body, mind, and breath in the flow section. So there's a whole other layer that as coaches and really pursuing mastery, which I hope to do in these 100-hour teacher trainings, is give people a broader toolbox for understanding the somatics behind these workouts and how they're able to help people become more embodied. And then the last piece here, I had a couple little bullet points to cover, so I'm going to brief them really quick. So the importance of teach backs when you're learning to coach. We prioritize active versus passive coaching cues, which means we're coaching where to stand, what to activate, what to stabilize the alignment, versus using words like we're gonna or ing words, breathing, moving. It's always direct and specific because we have a consequence, which is a heavy tool that could drop on our toe at any time, and we want to make sure that you're safe. Learning the why behind the movement. When you teach a man to fish or a woman to fish, they're going to be able to do it for a lifetime. So we know that if we educate you on the why behind why this movement pattern is beneficial, use your lats to pick up your groceries. You know, do your deep squat when you're picking up your kids to protect your lower back. When you can apply it to other activities in life, especially even recovery-based training on like mountain biking trails, for example, it's going to benefit you more and it's going to stick with you, and then it becomes more meaningful for you. Identifying power linkages, poise analysis, 6 degrees of freedom. These are all things that we cover in our movement labs at our teacher trainings. We have movement labs, and I do a weekly office hours on Tuesdays. How to master the art of teaching flow. Flow state is a consistent and measurable response to training. We touched on this a bit before. When things are too challenging, the students may feel confused, discouraged, overwhelmed. When exercises are too easy, students may be bored. Flow state happens when our challenges are just above our current ability and we can synchronize our movement with breath. And then we're always looking for that NIE response when a class is well curated, we've been primed in that prime section to activate those neural pathways and motor units and movement patterns, and we're coached progressively into more complex movement patterns. That's when we can tap into that neuroimmunoendocrine response. And then the why behind the movement. We're aiming to increase our functional movement patterns, and we want to build on proprioception and balance. We want to improve dynamic range of motion. We want to increase our endurance and stamina. It's not just about a pretty pose or a big deep back bend. It's about how we feel in our body and the quality of movement of how we're transitioning from one pose to the next or one movement to the next. And similarly in life, it's like how well are we able to fluidly transition from one activity to the next with the least amount of stress and the most amount of creativity and flow. So endurance, stamina, hormone balance, understanding the stress response. As COVID hit and our students had been training, recovery-based training, you know, just because that's what we do here is a big belief, core philosophy here at FlowShala is training on a 4-day wave, no low, mod, high, training the opposite of the stress response, so training parasympathetic nervous system tone and training that chug breath. So when we went into COVID lockdowns, it was like we had this tool of there was massive amounts of stress happening in the world with all the different things that happened over the first 2 months, and our students were showing up. We had 20 to 30 people in classes. We had workshops. People really thrived in their training because it was like we were training for this, and we had this like tool in our tool belts to help us overcome this massive, massive stress response. All right, I think I covered all the things. Thank you guys so much for attending today, and I'll put the link for the teacher training in the chat bar. Does anybody have any final questions, comments, or feedback before we're done? Here is that. Cool, and if you want to share any takeaways or just anything that you learned that you didn't know before, that's always helpful too. So what did you guys take away?
So I just took some notes on just a few things that I just really enjoy about like FlowShala and like the teaching style. But I gotta say what I'm most excited for is that 12-week program. Because like I did a couple of the seminars over the past year, and it's a lot of information in just a few hours. Mm-hmm. And like, I know for me, I'll be able to much better retain that knowledge. over like a longer form with those like office hours, you know, study group type things on the weekends, all that. That is like right up my alley. So I'm stoked.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And we've actually expanded it to 16 weeks. So it's advertised as 12, but it's going to be, we just give you an extra buffer because we just want to eliminate any and all stress and just give you guys lots of time to take advantage of coaching, teach backs, movement lab, office hours. And I do a full intake with you guys as well, where I set out your 16-week curriculum. You have a movement template for that, and we go into your patterns, posture, and power leakages as well. So lots of high touch, lots of attention to help you create a practice that's meaningful for you. Stoked to have you.
It's great.
Cool. Any other final takeaways? Thank you, Marilyn. Thanks for coming. All right.
That was a lot of lovely tying in, you know, all that I've learned into the other side of it, the education side. So thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah, I think just educating yourself on the why, like how we curate the classes, just makes you makes it just more meaningful for you too, to just like, I think when you just have that understanding of the why behind it, the education that went into it, the physiology, the neuroscience, it's just going to motivate you to show up even more and apply yourself even more. So keep up the good work, and I'd love to see your flows sometime soon, your freestyle ones. Post them in the private Facebook page if you ever feel inspired, and tag me. Cool. All right, thanks, ladies. Have a great rest of your night. And those of you guys that are watching this at home, you can apply for the teacher training on the FlowShala website. Book yourself a call with me. We'll talk about all the things. I'm really careful about who I let into it. The program, I want to make sure it's right for your professional goals and your level of commitment. Have a wonderful rest of your night, guys. Bye.
If you could, can you hit the unrecord, and then I have a question for you?